Welcome to On Demand Module 3, Teaching Success with REACH, Grades 1 and 2. National Geographic REACH is a core ESL program that delivers integrated instruction in language, literacy, and content for English language learners in grades K-5. REACH is aligned with national and state curriculum standards for ESL, ELD, English language arts, science, and social studies, including the Common Core standards. In this session, we will be taking a thorough look at the instruction in REACH levels B and C for use at grades 1 and 2. We'll begin by reviewing the REACH student and teacher components. Then we'll get into the instruction for the big questions and the unit launch. Next, we'll take a detailed look at the language, vocabulary, and reading instruction in REACH and the specialized strategies for English language learners. Once we finish that, we'll take a look at the daily writing and the writing projects in REACH. Then we'll take a detailed look at the assessment tools and reteaching options that you'll have available for each unit. And if you're using our Newcomer and Phonics programs, I'll also provide a brief overview of those resources. So let's begin with a review of the components at each level. Each student will have a student book for a majority of the instruction. They will also have access to the fiction and nonfiction leveled libraries if purchased, and the myngconnect.com website, where students can access the student edition, digital library, and My Vocabulary Notebook. The engaging classroom interactives for both teachers and students include a literature big book for each unit, teamwork activities that boost language and content learning in learning stations, and have complete teacher's guides located on the myngconnect.com website. Be sure to watch the MyNGConnect overview available on the On Demand Modules website to learn how to access these teacher guides. The Sing With Me Language Songs Big Book that helps create a risk-free environment for trying out new language, and the Language Builder picture cards that reinforce the vocabulary students have learned and can be used to check for understanding. Your teaching resources include 2 teacher's editions at each level: the REACH Practice Book and Blackline Masters, which can be purchased as a consumable for each student if your district chooses, or as a Blackline Master so you can copy whatever you need for instruction. There is a different pricing option for each one, so check with which option your district purchased. An annotated teacher's edition provides answers and models of student responses. The Reach into Phonics kit contains integrated phonics resources that will deliver systematic and scaffolded instruction in phonemic awareness, phonics, and high-frequency words. The ExamView CD-ROM includes question banks that allow you to create your own tests. And of course, all of the resources that are available on myngconnect.com include the Interactive Teacher's Edition. All right, let's review the instructional path for each unit. As a reminder, all 8 units follow the same instructional path. Each unit begins with a unit launch that builds background and sets the stage for learning. The instruction in each unit is broken down into 2 parts. Each of these 2 parts includes a main reading selection and a companion reading selection. Each unit contains explicit instruction in vocabulary, language, reading, and writing. In Part 2, students will be working on their writing project. And finally, the unit wrap-up gives students the opportunity to compare across texts and reflect upon their own reading. For this session, I'll be using Level B, Unit 4 as an example, but everything that I share will be applicable to any unit that you teach in Levels B and C. If you focus on the purpose of each lesson rather than the specific content, you'll be able to easily apply what you learn to the level you're working with because each unit follows the same instructional path. The main goals of the unit launch are to engage students and set the stage for learning by introducing the big question, which is the driving force of each unit. We begin by having students preview and predict by reading the unit title aloud and asking students what they think they're going to learn. The next step introducing the big question, is essential when it comes to helping students make connections to the unit theme. Following the big question, we'll build background by having students watch a National Geographic video and share what they know about the unit theme. As you can see, the directions for Share What You Know are provided right in the student book. The final step in the unit launch is to begin the unit concept map. Students will add to this concept map throughout the unit. Each concept map is tied to the big question for the unit. The Literature Big Book instruction immediately follows the unit launch. This lesson begins with a preview of the Big Book, allowing students to relate to their own personal experiences and preview the book and make predictions. Next, you'll use pages 2 and 3 of the Big Book to share the type of literature represented. In our example, it's a question book. Some other examples include fables, stories, and folktales. Then, it's time to share the Big Book through a read aloud. Use the sheltering strategies provided to help support the student's comprehension of the story's language. As you read the Big Book, you will use the questions provided in the Teacher's Edition to check understanding and build comprehension. In first grade, the Build Comprehension questions help preview and front-load the reading strategy that students will be working with throughout the unit. In second grade, these questions will review the reading strategy taught in the previous unit. Now that we've completed the unit launch, let's move on to Part 1. Remember, each part will include 2 paired reading selections, 1 fiction, 1 nonfiction. Within each part, there are 10 days of instruction. Let's take a quick look at the Teacher Edition planner pages to see how this instruction is laid out. Day 1 begins with introducing academic language with instruction in the first of 2 language functions. Then, students learn the content vocabulary and a literary analysis skill or text structure. Day 2 introduces more academic language, the grammar skill, academic vocabulary, and the reading strategy. Day 3 continues to build academic language and introduces the students to the second language function. Students also receive focused instruction on the reading strategy as they begin reading the selection. Reading the selection continues on Day 4 as students continue to build academic language. You can see the progression of grammar skills and vocabulary skills with the arrows as you look across the days. Students also think and respond to the text that they've read. On Day 5, students continue to build academic language beginning with a listening and speaking lesson before moving on to an applying word knowledge, rereading, and summarizing or comparing. You can see that students will also have daily writing built into each day of instruction. And if you've purchased Reach into Phonics, you can see that the phonics lessons for each day are listed, but you will find the actual instruction in the Reach into Phonics Teacher's Edition. Be sure to watch the Reach into Phonics recorded webinar to learn more. By using our online lesson planner, you can find a plan that will fit your instructional needs no matter what the instructional time frame. We have ready-to-go plans for 20, 30, 40, 60, and 90 minutes for use in a dual language model, along with content and literacy focus plans. To learn more about the Reach Online Planner, please make a note to view the Reach Online Lesson Planner video tutorial that shows you how to create your own plans, share plans, print plans, and more. Remember, in Reach, every day begins with the language of the day. These are meant to be quick opportunities for students to talk to each other and promote and extend academic talk. You'll notice that the more students practice speaking with language of the day, the more comfortable they'll become with it and the more language they will produce. Now, let's dive into Day 1, where you will begin with the introduction of a language function. First, you will teach and model the language function using the song, poem, or chant built right into the student book. In this case, our language function is Retell a Story. Then, students will practice and apply the language function by working in pairs. After introducing the language function, it's time to introduce the content vocabulary. These will either be social studies or science content vocabulary words. Every time you introduce students to new vocabulary, you will use vocabulary routine number 1. This routine follows the steps seen here: pronounce, rate, define, and elaborate. We'll take a more detailed look at this routine in a few minutes. We've provided opportunities to differentiate, like this list of Spanish cognates. Next, students will talk together about the big question. By engaging in the talk together activity, students are immersed in the words they're learning right away. Remember, students will be working with these words each day. After teaching the content vocabulary, it's time to introduce the literary analysis skill or text structure students will be working on within the selection. Remember, building understanding of these skills before reading helps students know what to expect and how to use the text to unlock key ideas and build understanding. The lesson begins with teaching the students the skill or structure. For example, students here will be learning about plot. This is taught using the student book and a read aloud. This is also where you will find the first introduction to a classroom vocabulary word. These are words that are specific to classroom procedures and skill instruction. In this example, the classroom vocabulary word is plot. The classroom vocabulary word is introduced to students, and then a vocabulary routine is used to extend the meaning of the word. Students will be categorizing words in this lesson and unit, so you will use the vocabulary routine to teach the meaning of the word category. The read aloud used to model the skill is available as an e-visual through MyNG Connect. Notice that we are also teaching students how to use a thinking map, and there is an example built right into their student book. Students will then practice and apply what they've learned by talking together and completing the practice master. Opportunities for differentiation are built into the Teacher's Edition, and opportunities to check student understanding of the skill or structure are also provided. And finally, as with the end of every day of the 10-day plan, we end with daily writing. The daily writing activity will vary from day to day, and it includes power writing, modeled writing, interactive writing, independent writing, and more. Here, we have the power writing routine number 1, which is located on page PD 53 in the front of your Reach Teacher's Edition. Power writing helps students learn to get their words down on paper and overcome the tendency to stall before starting to write. This routine is differentiated, so students will write just a word, a list of words, or a paragraph depending on their language proficiency level. Teachers and students really like this routine. Wait until you see what your kids can write in 1 minute. At the end of each day, a close and assess reminder is also built in to wrap up the learning and assess students' understanding of the language, reading, and vocabulary lessons for the day. Day 2 begins with the first lesson in the grammar skills path. As you can see, grammar will be taught on days 2, 4, and 7, and reviewed on day 10 in each part of the unit. The day 2 grammar lesson will be done using the Teacher's Edition and possibly an e-visual. All the grammar in Reach is contextualized, so grammar is taught within the context of the lesson. The grammar skill is taught and modeled using sentences linked to the content. The differentiation box for the grammar lessons will identify specific language transfer issues and supports for those students. Once the grammar skill has been taught and modeled, it's time to practice and apply the skill right away with a partner and on their own. Following the grammar lesson, it's time to teach the academic vocabulary words. These are known as delivery words because they are words that surround or are used to deliver the content. Remember, Teaching these words will follow the same routine as the content vocabulary on day 1, vocabulary routine number 1. When it's time for students to practice and apply, they will talk together in pairs to solidify their understanding of the words. You can also engage students with interactive learning tools by using the vocabulary notebook on myngconnect.com. Here, students can add the key words to their online vocabulary notebook at point of use to extend their understanding and expand their vocabulary. You'll find that consistent use of the vocabulary notebook will also help students to improve their writing and better understand the content that they are learning. Now that we know what type of words you'll be teaching, let's take a look at the explicit, consistent, predictable routine that you will use to teach these words. With this vocabulary routine, teachers first pronounce the word develop. We begin by having students rate themselves on their previous knowledge of each word. They can rate whether they have seen the word or can use it in a sentence by holding up their fingers to show how well they know each word. Next, it's time to explain the meaning of the word by studying the visual and using the clear, student-friendly examples provided. You will also notice the student-friendly definitions and examples for all content and academic words can be found in the back of the Reach student book and within the Teacher's Edition in the Picture Dictionary. In the fourth step, you will elaborate on the meaning of the word by generating a discussion of the word. Finally, you can write the words on cards or have students write them on cards and add them to your classroom word wall. Before reading the selection, students learn a reading strategy that helps them focus and develop the language and thinking needed to support strategic reading. The reading strategy for this unit is determine importance. Take a moment to read the introduction on the Big Book page. Support is provided through the use of a visual to show how to determine importance. Next, the strategy is modeled for students through a how-to chart right in the student book with visual cues and sentence frames. Finally, students have the opportunity to practice and apply the strategy they learn through using various pages from the Big Book. Differentiated academic language frames are provided to help support students at all levels. Also, on day 2, there will always be a mini phonics and fluency lesson. These lessons can be used to practice and review phonics skills that are thematically related to the content of the selection. Once the reading strategy has been taught, it's time for daily writing. And again, the day ends with an opportunity to close and assess in all 3 areas: language, reading, and vocabulary. Pause the session and take a few moments to explore the instruction on days 1 and 2 and answer this question. How do these lessons support students in front-loading and scaffolding instruction? As you explore, keep your students in mind and look for specific supports that you will use. When you have finished exploring, click play to resume the session. Following the language of the day, Day 3 begins with the introduction of the second language function using the same explicit instruction with teach, model, practice, and apply. Notice that students are applying the new language function directly to what they did with the first language function on day 1. Students will expand their word knowledge, which is in the vocabulary skills trace for the unit. This time you will use vocabulary routine number 2 to create a graphic organizer, illustration, or writing piece to expand students' knowledge of the meaning and usage of new words. This is a great opportunity for students to create non-linguistic representations of these new words. Students will then work in groups to create a final piece for each keyword and then place them on the word wall. Differentiated support is also offered to support newcomers during this lesson through use of picture cards. Now it's time to begin reading the first selection, which always begins with a preview. Each preview will follow the same 3 steps. First, introduce the selection by sharing the title, Ruby in her own time, and explain any concepts students may not understand. Then, introduce the students to the genre of the selection and one of the aspects of that genre. For example, here students are working with a story, so they need to know something about the elements of a story, including characters. This information is always presented to the students in their student books, and an example is provided. This page also reminds students about the reading strategy students will be applying to the selection. Use the Big Book strategic reading page to remind the students how the reading strategy works. Finally, you will preview and build background using the say and do sheltering strategies as you conduct a picture walk. Pause the session and take a few moments to explore the instruction provided for any reading selection. As you explore, try to identify student supports and teacher supports. When you have finished exploring, click play to resume the session. Now that you've had a chance to explore a reading selection, let's look at a few student supports I hope you noticed. Within Reach, you'll find there are built-in opportunities to connect across texts and introduce the genre. You'll also find both content and academic key vocabulary words that are highlighted, and strong visual support is always included. Next, let's look at the teacher supports. Opportunities to build comprehension are built in for each selection. And as you read through the selection with the students, you will gradually release the responsibility to them as they work on the reading strategy, determine importance, that the students learned on day 2. At certain points in the selection, there may be a word or phrase that the students may not understand. In those situations, an "in other words" reference is made that provides you with exactly what it says, other words that mean the same thing. As you can see here, Reach also provides support through different reading options for below level, on level, and above level students. Let's take a look at how one teacher, Ms. Gomez, uses these reading options to work with her 3 levels of students. She will use the key points reading with her below level readers to have them track print while she reads aloud to them, so that they can begin to acquire print knowledge. While Ms. Gomez is working with one of her groups, here are some things her other students can be doing. After she's grouped her students based on their reading levels, Ms. Gomez has some of her students working in their practice book, while others are listening to the MP3 of the reading selection and reading along. This is also a great time for her students to use the language and literacy and cross-curricular teamwork activities that are connected to the content in each unit. And another group uses the student resources located on myngconnect.com. While the groups rotate through the stations, Ms. Gomez begins working with the on-level students. Then her above-level students read with a partner before she asks them the build comprehension questions. Day 3 ends with a modeled writing lesson writing routine found on PD 54, and you will wrap the instructional day up with a close and assess. Now that we've introduced and begun to build students' academic language, Day 4 begins with the next step of the grammar skills trace. As you can see, you will continue to work with students on the same grammar skill that they learned on Day 2. You will expand on the grammar skill you taught on Day 2 through teach and model. Then, in practice and apply, students will get an immediate opportunity to apply the new skill using their practice book. On Day 4, you will use vocabulary routine number 3 to share students' knowledge about the word for which they have become class experts. Students will then get the chance to extend that sharing through a cooperative learning routine supporting academic talk. And notice this time you will check understanding of the lesson using one of the Language Builder picture cards, where students will have the opportunity to use the key words that they've learned while talking about the picture. As I just mentioned, students will share their new word knowledge through cooperative learning routines. The routines will vary throughout the program, but pages PD 58 and PD 59 includes a comprehensive list of all of the routines that you will cover. On day 4, you will still be reading the selection, but when that is complete, students have the opportunity to think about and respond to the selection. Notice the Talk About It section has students applying the language function they first learned on day 1, retell a story. You can see how tightly scaffolded Reach is to promote student success. Step 2 in the Think and Respond lesson, Test-Taking Strategies, provides detailed instruction for teaching students a strategy they can use when they take any type of test. Notice you will be using an e-visual to deliver this instruction. This same strategy will be studied in Part 1 and Part 2, and additional test question examples are provided on the actual e-visual. With Reach, test prep is built right into the lessons. Day 4's daily writing also uses the modeled writing routine, but this time, the writing assignment is built right into the student book in the Write About It section of the Think and Respond page. Now that we've walked through instruction on days 1 through 4, pause the session and take a few moments to look at the instruction for days 5 through 7. What's new or different on these pages than in the first 4 days of instruction? Okay, you probably saw a lot of similarities in the instruction for days 5 through 7. Now let's look at what's new. On day 5, you will continue to focus on the language function taught on day 1, but now students will learn a new element of that skill. Remember, we've been focusing on retelling a story, and as you can see here, now we are teaching them how to sequence. It's the same thing, right? First, next, then. After teaching and modeling this new skill, students will practice using the unit launch video. Use the How to Learn Language Differentiation box to help students at all levels. Day 5 is also the first time students will be rereading and retelling the story. Each student will retell the events from the reading selection to a partner, and then they will reverse roles and repeat. As you can see here, you will use the Retelling a Story rubric to assess students' ability to retell the story. Notice that the rubric is differentiated for beginning, intermediate, advanced, and advanced high students. Day 5 also provides an opportunity for fluency practice using a section of the selection test. A practice master is provided, and students will focus on the different aspects of fluency. Day 6 is the beginning of the companion selection instruction, but this time we begin by connecting the text we are about to read to the text we already read in the main selection. Then we introduce the genre and preview and build background just like we did with the main selection. As you read, scaffolded instruction for building comprehension is provided again. We still have the scaffolded support for students at different reading levels, but notice that this time, as we build comprehension, we are reteaching the reading strategy if necessary. On day 7, students will be working on the grammar skill, but now they'll be using their student book, gradually releasing responsibility to students for this skill. Students will also reread the companion selection with a specific focus on important details, and do their daily writing, which again is modeled writing, but this time you'll be using a Think Aloud to plan and write. Now, days 8 and 9 are a little different. Students will work on either a theme theater using the main selection, or they will work on an oral language report. This is a time for your students to shine and show you what they've learned. You can even videotape your students performing the activities and have them watch and assess themselves afterwards. It's sure to be a big hit, and it's a great chance to assess the language function by using the Oral Language Project rubric located in the Assessment Handbook. On days 8 and 9, you also have the opportunity to provide differentiated reading instruction using the guided reading routine and the leveled books if purchased. The great part about these is that the work has been done for you. All of these leveled books are linked to the content covered in the unit, so there's no need to look for additional books. There is even a leveled book finder located on myngconnect.com that you can use to link books that you might already have at your school. Remember, there are 6 leveled books per part. There are 3 fiction and 3 nonfiction. For all of the leveled readers, key vocabulary words have been selected, and this is where students extend their vocabulary as seen in the vocabulary skills trace. And don't forget that there are lesson plans for each book that you can download on myngconnect.com. You can learn how to access these with Getting Started with a MyNG Connect tutorial. These lessons are a wonderful resource and connect back to the big idea. They're differentiated and encourage students to share and compare and relate what they've learned back to the grammar skill. On day 10, it's time to review and assess student learning through interactive review activities that reinforce the concepts covered in the Part 1. The people icons represent how you should administer the review, in pairs, in groups, in a team, or individually. Notice that there are 2 areas where you will assess the students using the assessment handbook. Now, let's take a look at those areas. The first area that you will test students on is the language function. You can use these rubrics with the language function activity in order to assess students' understanding of the language function they've been working with. The second area you will assess students on is vocabulary. The keywords test will check student understanding of all keywords covered in this part, both content and academic. Now, take a moment to pause this presentation and consider how REACH prepares English language learners for academic success. When you have finished, click play to resume the session. After day 10, it's time to move on to Part 2. The instruction in Part 2 is almost the same as in Part 1. The one main difference in this part includes the writing project. Let's look at this a little closer. In Part 2, your daily writing will always include the writing project. As you can see, the Teacher's Edition will tell you which step you are on in the writing project and which pages you need to go to for that instruction. Notice how tightly connected the writing projects in REACH are to the reading. For example, students will be writing a story about when they were younger and growing up. Remember, our unit theme is growing and changing, and the main selection in Part 1 was a story about Ruby growing up. Each writing project in REACH focuses on a specific mode and form and includes an e-visual checklist up front to help students clearly unlock what needs to be included in this mode and form of writing. Each writing project also hones in on one of the traits of good writing for more focused instruction, although students are held accountable for all traits of writing when they are assessed. The writing trait for this unit is voice and style. In addition to focusing on this trait, classroom vocabulary instruction is included to ensure that students understand the meaning of the trait so that they can transfer what that means to their own writing. Each writing project also maps out the lesson overview and suggested pacing for all steps of the writing process. Remember, the writing project is not meant to be taught at the end of the unit, even though that's where it's found in the Teacher's Edition. It will be referenced as a part of the daily writing lesson in Part 2 of each unit. You can find information on specific pacing on myngconnect.com's online planner pacing plan. The REACH writing rubric will be used to score each student's project on all traits. But as you can see on this rubric, the focus for instruction in this unit is voice and style. Now, let's take a closer look at the writing project itself. You will begin the writing project by analyzing the prompt using the RAFT strategy and discussing who the intended audience is. Then, you'll have students study the writing model and focus on the features of that mode using a checklist. Next, you will teach the trait and model how the trait is broken down in the student book in order to make the parts accessible to all students. Next, Students will begin the pre-writing process by choosing a topic and gathering information about the topic. Then, students will organize their thoughts by using the practice master provided. Again, multi-level strategies are provided to help support students at all proficiency levels. Now it's time for students to begin their first draft. You will introduce drafting using the modeled writing routine located on PD 54. Notice the say and write directions and suggestions built right into your teacher's edition for you to use as you model the process. Then, students will begin writing the draft, and you will again use multi-level strategies in order to support all learners. Once students have finished drafting, it's time for them to revise their drafts. First, you will review the trait with students using the practice book. Then, you will project the e-visual found on myngconnect.com to model for students how to conduct a peer conference. Students will then read their draft to a partner and talk with each other about ways to improve. The next step of the revision process will be for students to make changes to a sample paragraph from a story using the revising marks they learned. And if they need additional practice on these marks, you can refer them to their practice book. Then, you will ask students to make revisions to their own drafts using the revising marks and the rubric and notes from their peer conference. Revision is an important skill covered on many state writing tests, and REACH prepares ELLs for success. Once students have completed the revisions of their content, it's time to edit and proofread. Students go through the process of editing for grammar, spelling, and mechanics. Once they've completed their final draft, it's time to publish and share their story. Now that we've completed the unit launch, Part 1 and Part 2, it's time for the unit wrap-up. The unit wrap-up begins with a talk-together opportunity that brings students back to the big question and their completed unit concept map. It continues with a variety of opportunities for students to share their ideas about the big question and tie what they've learned back to the beginning of the unit, all promoting academic talk. Notice the below, intermediate, advanced, and advanced high differentiation icons reflect the range of levels for each presentation option. The presentation options for beginning and intermediate level students offer more pictorial support and the opportunity for students to express themselves kinesthetically. Now it's time to assess your students on what they've learned. Now, we all know assessment is critical to instruction and academic success, which is why REACH has a comprehensive assessment plan. REACH provides many opportunities to check for understanding, assess, and identify how to close gaps and support student success before testing. There are many assessment tools and rubrics in REACH that will help you provide ongoing monitoring of your student progress. First, there are the PART assessments that were mentioned during Day 10 instruction, and they're shown here. You'll remember we looked at examples of the language function, the oral language rubric, and the vocabulary assessments. Additionally, the reading strategy assessment is very similar to the other assessments. These PART tests are a critical part of the assessment process in REACH, and they can be used as an early indicator that reteaching or additional instruction may be necessary. Next, there are 3 unit tests that students take at the end of each unit. They are reading, writing, and grammar. Let's take a look at those a little closer. When it comes to the unit tests in REACH, you can test the way you teach. Multi-level strategies are used while teaching, and the same occurs when it comes to assessment on the unit tests for reading, grammar, and writing. These tests are designed to be rigorous and thereby familiarize students with state test formats, track student progress, and provide prescriptions for reteaching. It is also easy to administer these tests to different levels of students at the same time. Here, you see an example of a vocabulary question from the advanced high version of a unit test. And here is an example from an intermediate and a beginning level test. Notice that the lower the language proficiency, the more pictorial support that is provided. You can see on these reading unit tests that the beginning, intermediate, advanced, and advanced high levels are indicated at the top of each test form in the assessment handbook. So don't be alarmed when you open your assessment handbook and see how many pages there are. In REACH, all of the differentiating is done for you to save you time. Once you have assessed students using the reading, grammar, and writing unit assessments, you can use the answer key in the back of the assessment handbook to score the tests and enter the information into the student profile sheet like you see here. Then, use the class profile to determine if students need reteaching. If a student doesn't master a specific reporting category, reteaching is necessary. You may want to use different colored highlighters or markers to help you easily see which students need reteaching in each reporting category. Using this sample class profile on the right, we can see that 2 students in this class, Michelle and Juan, need reteaching in using context clues. And if your student or district has purchased e-assessment, all of this is done for you automatically once the students' answer sheets have been scanned in or they complete their selection test online. Be sure to check back for On-Demand Module 6, e-assessment, to learn how to access these reports. Okay, I've mentioned reteaching a few times now, so let me show you where you can find the reteaching lessons that are already developed for you on MyNG Connect. These reteaching resources are available in the resource directory. Once you click on the link for the appropriate reteaching lesson, you then click on the download button to open the reteaching options and save them to your desktop or print them out for later use. Here you can see a sample reteaching lessons for vocabulary. The first page of the document includes the instructional path for reteaching the key vocabulary. The next page contains the activities you can assign for practice. Notice that these activities are already differentiated by language proficiency for you. Each of these activities is a different way for students to practice the material that they have learned. To reteach comprehension, you can use the leveled library lesson plans located on MyNG Connect that I shared with you earlier in our session today. For more detailed directions on how to access these resources, be sure to view the MyNG Connect videos available on the on-demand website. Take a moment to think about how you will use the reteaching lessons in your classroom. Let's think back to our teacher, Ms. Gomez, who implements her reteaching lessons in a variety of ways. Sometimes she uses the reteaching lessons during her small group instruction. Once a week, she works with the other teachers on her team, and they divide up the students based on their reteaching needs. And sometimes, she has the students work on the reteaching lessons during their after-school tutorial lessons. Another powerful tool that's available is the ExamView CD-ROM. This CD-ROM, which includes question banks for all part and unit tests with editing capability. There is also a test wizard to create your own tests and multiple versions of the same test, and it allows you to print tests and answer sheets. In addition to testing resources, there are the Phonics resources and the Newcomer resources that are aligned to the instruction in REACH. Let's take a quick look at REACH into Phonics. REACH into Phonics uses compelling and flexible materials for delivering systematic and scaffolded instruction in phonological awareness, phonics, and high-frequency words. Be sure to watch the REACH into Phonics overview available on the On-Demand Modules website to learn more. Now let's take a look at the Newcomer support for students in grades 2 through 5. In the USA helps newcomers develop language, survival vocabulary, and the basic building blocks of literacy for newly arrived and pre-literate students. Be sure to watch the In the USA overview available on the On-Demand Modules website to learn more about the support for newcomers. Congratulations! You have almost completed the 4th On-Demand module for REACH. In this session, we reviewed the REACH student and teacher components and walked through the big questions and the unit launch. Then we took a detailed look at the language, vocabulary, reading and writing instruction in REACH and the specialized strategies for ELLs. Next, we focused on the assessment tools and reteaching options available for each unit. And finally, I shared a brief overview of our Newcomer and Phonics programs. For a more detailed look at these two programs, be sure to view the recorded webinars available on the On-Demand module website. Before you attend the next Reach On-Demand module, first use your assessment handbook to find the assessment tools that work best for you, your school, and your district. Then, take out your calendar and schedule time to view the Reach On-Demand training modules for your grade level. As a reminder, they are listed on the On-Demand Training tab on the Reach in Action Professional Development website.